And we're back. Hello again, and welcome to Oh My God, This Book is So Long, also known as Becoming Naomi Leon.
Started this in March.
We're going to wrap it up today, guys. We're going to finish. And we're going to finish. So settle in. It's going to be the long haul. We're powering through to the end. It's not even that long, okay? Look at that. Look at that. And some of these is notes. Ready? Yeah, see, that's it. It's not a lot. All right, okay. Chapter 20, A Crash of Hippopotami. I can imagine like that's just, hippopotamus is not the most elegant creature, and, they're beautiful.
The deadliest. It's the deadliest animal in the world. But
There you go. They kind of,
that's true. But
they're not graceful. They kind of woo. Okay, Crash of Hippopotami. The day before school started, we arrived at the courthouse too early, which didn't help my jitters. Graham, Owen, and I waited on a bench outside our assigned room. The mediator lady had come to Lemon Tree on Friday, just as planned, wearing a suit and hugging her clipboard. She had been nice, but all business, asking Owen and me each privately about a million questions like, what did Graham feed us? How many times a week did we take a bath? Have we ever contracted head lice? And everybody in our class is like, yes. Okay. Now, sitting in the courthouse and staring down the long hallway with the perfectly shined floors, I hoped I had answered correctly. There was no sign of Skyla or Clive. A man approached Graham. Are you Mary Outlaw? Yes, sir, she said. I'm the clerk. Right this way. The judge will be here in a few minutes. He opened the door and held it while we walked inside. The courtroom did not look like the ones on television, with the wood railings and oak chairs and a tall box for the witness. It was a small room with a desk at the front. Built-in seats, like the kind at the movies, were arranged in 3 short rows. One lone seat was positioned next to the judge's desk. I looked around the room. Posters of children hung on the walls. Teenagers playing basketball, a little boy and girl hugging a very old lady, children sliding down slides with their hands in the air, and a circle of babies in cute outfits. I guessed it was like those friendly rooms at Children's Hospital. The court wanted the room to feel not so scary when they gave you the bad news. Skyla walked in at the last minute with Clive, but at first I wasn't sure it was either one of them. Skyla wore a pale pink skirt and sweater set, nylons, also known as, like stockings, pantyhose, that sort of thing, flat pink slip-on shoes, and a strand of pearls. Her hair was natural-looking light brown, and she wore hardly a lick of makeup, except for a bubblegum pink lipstick. Clive's hair had been buzzed short, as if he was enlisting in the military. He wore slacks and a shirt with a button-down collar. Graham leaned into me. Well, don't they look like the all-American couple? I didn't know if Graham was trying to make a joke or if she was as scared as I was. When Skyla saw me and Owen, she waved at us as if nothing was wrong, as if she wasn't trying to do something horrible and mean to our family. I've missed you so much, she said from across the room. Her voice was so sugar-coated that I wondered who the show was for. The only other person in the room was the clerk, and he wasn't paying a nickel of attention. The judge came in and sat down, and we did the same. Skyla and Clive on one side, and Graham, Owen, and I on the other. Even though the judge looked friendly with smile wrinkles around her eyes like Fabiola's, as soon as I saw that black robe, I shuddered inside. It meant the law, that whatever the judge said would have to be carried out. Let's get started, she said. Miss Skylar Jones, I'll hear from you first. I see here that you left Naomi and Owen in the care of your grandmother 7 years ago. Skylar stood. Yes, Your Honor. I did leave them with my grandmother after some rather awful circumstances. And what were those? I was getting out of a bad marriage. I didn't have any money and I needed time to make a life for myself and my children. So this separation was not something you wanted. Oh no, no mother wants to be apart from her children. Skylar glanced over at us. She looked like an angel. Graham took my hand. Miss Jones, can you explain what you've been doing during the past 7 years? I have had some trouble, Your Honor, but that has all changed. I admit I have been in rehabilitation, but I have recently been successful in completing she looked at Clive, a comprehensive program. Clive nodded and smiled at Skylar. There are doctor's reports here about alcohol-induced mental illness, said the judge. Were you going to leave that out? No, of course not. I am on medication and I have not missed one dose. And part of my rehabilitation is to establish a relationship with my children. More than anything, that is what I want. Skylar looked lovingly toward us. I applaud your efforts, Miss Jones, said the judge. You may sit down. I bit my lip. If Skylar had acted like this when she was interviewed, what had been the mediator's recommendation to the judge? You know, every time I read the word mediator, I'm thinking about Sunri and Tyleek. I'm so sorry. Okay.
How do you feel about it? How did that make you feel? If you feel seen? Yeah, I see Tyleek and Sunri totally. Absolutely.
Okay.
That seems like such a long time ago.
I know. I hope they're still mediating, but by Zoom or something. Mrs. Outlaw, said the judge. Graham stood up. Yes, ma'am. How old are you? Let me tell you, I don't answer that question out loud. But Graham, she's better than me. I am 69 years old. And are you in good health? Yes, very, said Graham. The judge's voice softened. But the reality is clear, isn't it? You are not a young woman. Yes, ma'am, that's true. But I take good care of myself. And if something happens to me, their father, Santiago Leon, will step forward and help. He wants the children to stay with me, and he hopes to visit them as much as possible. He wrote a letter saying as much. When they heard our father's name, Skylar and Clive put their heads together and started whispering. The judge raised her eyebrows and looked through the file in front of her. Let's see. I have here notarized letters from Miss Morimoto and Mr. Marble, both teachers at the children's school, commending you for your dedication to Naomi and Owen. I have a similar letter from a Mrs. Maloney, a neighbor, and reports from Naomi's counselor and 2 doctors at Children's Hospital. And the judge put one paper in front of the others and studied it. Here it is, a notarized letter from the children's father. It says he was discouraged from trying to contact the children by Miss Jones, but has continued to send financial assistance and now wants to establish a visitation schedule to maintain his relationship with them. That's right, said Graham. Miss Jones, what do you have to say about this? Skylar looked at Clive and nodded, then faced the judge. I was very young and immature when I left the children with my grandmother. I regret many of my actions during that time of my life. And you would be fine with a visitation schedule for your ex-husband? Oh, yes, Your Honor. I only want what's best. That's what I told the woman the other day when she interviewed me. That's why Naomi especially needs to be with me. She needs her mother, not a great-grandmother who is so far removed from the contemporary issues of her life. That's very good, Miss Jones. The judge gave Skyla a peculiar smile, then looked back at the papers in her hand. I have the recommendation of the mediator before me, but before I make the final decision, I would like to hear from the children. Naomi, would you come up here, please? I stood up and looked at Graham. She patted my arm and pointed to the chair next to the judge's desk. I walked over and sat down, facing directly across from Skyla. I couldn't take my eyes off the perfect M of her lips. Naomi, the judge's voice finally got my attention. Look at me, please. I turned toward the black robe. I need to explain something. I'm always very hesitant to separate parents and children. I feel they should be together whenever possible, except for unusual circumstances. As long as your mother refrains from alcohol and takes her medications and has a good faith intention of caring for you, I could not, with any good conscience, deny your mother her parental rights unless I heard a compelling reason. So can you give me any reason why you shouldn't be with your mother? I heard the judge's words, but I couldn't believe them. I was going to have to live with Skyla. I wanted to tell the judge everything. I wanted to say that I needed to live with Graham and Owen because I didn't know my mother very well and that she scared me. My mind said the words, but my mouth couldn't form them. With everyone staring at me, a brick wall had sprouted between my words and the world, without a crack of daylight for a whisper to escape. Naomi, if you can't add any different information to this situation. Skyla sat up straight, wiggled in her seat, and squeezed Clive's arm. I closed my eyes and heard my father's words. Be brave, Naomi Leon. I felt a rumbling in my mind, the sound a bulldozer makes when it's headed toward you. A sensation came over me, as if someone had unlatched a gate that freed a herd of lunging wild animals. I opened my eyes to find Skyla's gaze drilling into me. Is that what you want, Naomi? To live with your mother? Asked the judge. I looked at Graham and Owen and slowly shook my head. No, I said. A little louder, Naomi. I can't hear you. It was as if the stampede crashed through the wall in front of me. No, I said again, and slowly began telling the story from the beginning. How Graham was a widow and lost her only daughter, how Skyla and Santiago got married and took us to Mexico, and Skyla gave us to Graham so she could find her life, how Santiago loved us, but Skyla wouldn't let him have us, how we lived in avocado acres next to the avocado grove and lemon tree so Owen could have room to be a wild monkey. I kept talking, louder now. Graham loves us and takes care of us. She's been both our parents all rolled into one until we met our father. Lemon Tree is my home. That's where I belong. I don't want to go to Las Vegas to live with Skyla. Skyla said she would hurt Graham. She said something bad might happen to Graham if I didn't go with her to Las Vegas. As if a dam had burst, I couldn't stop the rush of words. I told how Skyla just wanted me to be a babysitter for Sapphire, and how she had started drinking again, and about the slap, and how there was more where that came from. I said I loved my school and my friend Blanca. I told about my carvings and children's hospital and Owen being an FLK and how Skyla didn't want him anymore because she thought he was a blem. Then I told about my father and how we had found him. I told the judge about self-prophecy and how if you wanted something to happen, you should say it was going to happen over and over again, and that I had been thinking everything will be all right. I'll always be with Graham and Owen, at least 1,000,000 times since Mexico. I said all that with Skyla and Clive looking right at me. Skyla stood up. Your Honor, she has always had an overactive imagination. I need my little girl and she needs me. We belong together, just Naomi and me. Can't you see that what she's been telling you is just little white lies? Skyla sat down and started weeping and blotting her eyes with a tissue. I swore she was making her eyes red on purpose by pressing too hard. I turned to the judge and in a very strong voice, I'm not lying. Thank you, Naomi, said the judge. You may sit down. The judge looked confused. Miss Jones, there's one issue I need clarified before I can rule. Do I understand correctly that you only want Naomi? Skyla immediately composed herself. Yes, that's all I want, Your Honor, my daughter. And you don't want your son? And why don't you want your son? Well, that's not the issue. I'm Naomi's mother, and I have a right. Miss Jones, I will decide the issue. Now, why don't you want your son? Skyla seemed flustered and looked at Clive. Well, he was born. He had so many problems that I never really connected with him, bonded with him. I only had him 1 year of his life, so he doesn't even remember me. And I don't really remember much about him. Naomi, being older and a girl and all, were much more suited in a mother-daughter way, if you know what I mean. So you have no intention of taking both of the children away from Mrs. Outlaw, said the judge. Oh, no, Your Honor. Miss Jones, did you relay this information to the mediator during the interview? Well, no. I figured that was my own personal choice. See, Owen's better off in Lemon Tree and Naomi's better off with me. We should be together, said Skyla, smiling and obviously satisfied with her answer. I looked at Owen, who was on the other side of Graham. Graham had her arm around him, and he did not look sad or anything. If he found Skyla's words upsetting, there was enough tape plastered across his shirt to hold him together. Well then, said the judge, I don't need to take additional time to consider this case. I'm ready to rule. I rarely withhold parental rights, and the mediator did recommend that the children live with their mother. But I believe she did not understand the issue in its entirety, especially since Miss Jones was not forthcoming. I am extremely hesitant to separate siblings who have lived together their entire lives. That is something I will not do, especially when there are loving, attentive, and responsible relatives to act as their caregivers, such as Mrs. Outlaw and the father, who both clearly want these children. Since Miss Jones has established her preference to this court, which is clearly not in the best interest of Naomi and Owen, I grant guardianship to Mrs. Outlaw. Miss Jones, we can set up a supervised visitation schedule for you, if you like, to visit both of your children. The judge pounded the gavel. This hearing is over. That's right. Bam. Done. Drop the mic. Peace out. Roll credits. No, I'm just kidding. There's like another chapter to go. Sorry, guys. Skyla looked confused. Clive grabbed her hand and they hurried out of the courtroom. He never looked back, but Skyla did. She raised her free hand and gave us a weak smile and a little wave of her fingers before Clive pulled her out the door. "Let's go," said Graham, wrapping an arm around each of us. She drove us toward home. We were almost to Avocado Acres when Graham turned right instead of left at the corner. Where are they headed? The spray and play. All right, guys. Chapter 21, A Brood of Chicks. On Wednesday, the first day back to school after the break, Blanca was waiting on the steps for me. "Wow, I missed you," she said, hugging me tight. "I heard you went to Mexico. Tell me all about it." I'm full Mexican. I've never been there except to Tijuana, and that doesn't really count since it's practically in San Diego. "Hey, your bangs are longer. You've only got 2 clips on each side." "Big news. There's someone new at the lunch library. His name is Maida Bacchiano." We laughed. Maida Bacchiano, or Mita Bacchiano, was a shoo-in for my unusual names list. I told Blanca as much as I could about everything on our way to class. Miss Morimoto gave me a hug too. "Naomi, finally you're back. I was worried you wouldn't make it to the play this weekend. I'm so happy you'll be joining us." At lunch, Mr. Marble said, "Naomi Outlaw, I'm ecstatic to see you." I added ecstatic to my splendid words list. "Now we have our little nest of library chicks all back in their usual places," he said, counting and pointing at John Lee, Mimi Messmaker, Maida, Bacchiano, Blanca, and me. "All is right with the world." After lunch, while Blanca visited with Maida Bacchiano and talked his ear off, I got up the courage to show Mr. Marble some of my carvings. I pulled the figures wrapped in paper towel out of my backpack and arranged the families of reptiles, birds, tigers, and lions on the checkout counter. I lined up the ducklings and the fish and the elephants, and I told him how I had carved in La Noche de los Rábanos. He said, "Naomi Outlaw, you are a girl of great talent and many layers. Who knew? Thank you for sharing these with me. I am overwhelmed with delight. Would you allow me to feature these in the glass case for open house in a few months? I always save the spectacular collections for that event." Would I allow him to be in the glass case for open house for the entire school and their families to see? It was the highest honor at Buena Vista Elementary. It could be my claim to fame. The library lunch bunch crowded around. "Wow, Naomi the lion," said Blanca. "Those are amazing." "You carved those?" said Mimi Messmaker. "That looks hard." I guess that was the best I could get from Mimi, but I didn't care. Mr. Marble considered me in a thoughtful way. "I can already tell you are a different girl since you went to Mexico. Before you were a mouse, but now you have the countenance of a lioness." I loved Mr. Marble. After school, Blanca waited on the steps with Owen and me, like always. When Graham pulled up in the Toyota, Blanca said, "Bye, Naomi the lion. I'll see you in the morning, right here." She pointed to the steps. "Bye," I called to her and waved. She looked at me funny. "You know something, Naomi? Your voice is louder." A murmuration of tomorrows. On the outside of things, nothing much had changed. Graham still made some of our clothes, and we still lived in Baby Beluga at Avocado Acres in Lemon Tree. We went to spray and play to make sundaes and watch the cars go through the wash. My hair was still unruly, but it finally grew out to where I only needed 1 clip on each side to keep it back. Some days I wore it half up and half down, just like Graciela. On the inside, though, I was different. I had experienced Barrio Jalatzlaco, Las Posadas, and Quesillo. I had walked on cobblestone streets and thrown pottery at a church just for the sake of luck. Me! I had discovered my mother, I suppose Owen and I would always long for her a little and wonder what it would have been like if she'd been different. Graham said Skyla could clean up her act and try to take us back to court someday, but that we shouldn't count those chickens before they hatched. Graham said it wasn't likely that Skyla would make the effort to visit us either, but if she did, I wouldn't mind. I would like to feel her hands on my head, French braiding my hair again. It was funny how she was nice in a mean way and mean in a nice way. There it was again, the good and bad all rolled into a meatball. I had also found my father, who had loved me for a long time without being nearby. How many others were walking around and not even knowing that someone far away cared for them? Imagine all that love floating in the air, waiting to land on someone's life. Although we had discovered our parents, our lives with Graham were carved into our beings. We were her prizes, and that was good enough for us. Santiago had taught me that you must carve what your imagination dictates so that what is inside can become what it is meant to be. In the end, the figure will reveal itself for what it really is. It was true. In Mexico, I had seen carvings of wooden angels with horns, a parrot with a fishtail, a lizard with wings, a three-legged dog. It worked the same with people too. A mother with a cat's claws, a father with a lion's heart, a great-grandmother with a bird's protective outstretched wings, a mouse with a lioness's voice. I might have begun with a whisper, but it had been strong enough to make a self-prophecy come true. I found a foot-stomping holler that would be loud enough to say boo to those boys someday. I could now overcome an army of worries. I even made a promise to our father, which I intended to keep, that no matter where we lived, we'd all travel to Oaxaca every year at Christmas time for the Night of the Radishes. After all, a Leon had been carving in the competition for over 100 years. I hoped my father was right, that like the figures we carved from wood and soap, I was becoming who I was meant to be, the Naomi Soledad Leon outlaw of my wildest dreams. The end. We did it. We finished the book.
I felt like that looked like credits rolling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I might be doing it backwards now. I don't know.
Just do it both ways.
It's funny because when because I never watched these.
Yeah.
I was looking on Friday and I was trying to figure out if Xavier was doing that attendance, and I'm hunting down Xavier. So I went on YouTube to see if he had listened to it or something. And like, oh, I see what she means. I'm on that side. You're on this side. I didn't realize what it were recorded that we're on. I'm not, whatever.
There you go.
See it more when I start. I know that this is all recorded. I know I'm recording. Should I share what we're reading next so if anybody wants to order it?
Oh, that's a great idea.
This is our next book. And if you want to say anything about Naomi Leon, but this is the next book we're reading. So I don't know if anyone wants to get it on Amazon or wherever you buy your books these days. It's called The Books of Elsewhere. It's The Shadows. It's the first book. You have to be careful because it's a series. So we're reading the first one, The Shadows.
And if you thoroughly enjoyed becoming Naomi Leon for the past 100 bazillion months that we've been reading it, she has another book, Esperanza Rising, which is kind of like this one. I think they read it in 5th grade, though.
I think they stopped because it was too long.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think I remember at one of our meetings, one of those breakout days, it came up. But
it is another wonderful read.
This is fantastic. Like I saw her once in a talk and she was amazing.
Yeah, there are lots of interviews on YouTube with her if you're interested in finding Pam Munoz Ryan. I'm trying to read that first. She talks about this book a lot too. Okay, so like I said, I can't believe it. We did it. We finished. So this is my last video for you guys, and
For
this book,
you'll be a cameo in mine.
there'll be a cameo in Stacy's. And thanks so much for being patient and keeping up with us. Bye.
Next Monday, we'll start another one.
All right.
Yes.